Welcome into the Skinny Podcast, the first of the new year. It's the weekly poetry edition, as always presented by Blake the Attorney Maislet. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Broering. We got college basketball to talk about, Bengals in the regular season finale, and all the things that may come after that. We'll have a lot of unpacking to do next week, whether it's them playing another week in the playoffs or looking at the offseason. We got some college football playoff to talk about. In fact, we thought we'd be through the quarterfinal round by the time we did this podcast, but there's still one more game to be played. And then the portion of the podcast I always enjoy, actually the gambling segment, and then the favorite portion of the podcast where you can ask me a question on any topic. Go to the Xverse, hit up the hashtag AskSkinnyAnything. It does not have to be on sports. We prefer sometimes if it's not on sports, but it can be, and we'll answer that question as well. Rick, how was your New Year's Eve and your New Year's Day?
It was the best, Skinny, because, I had a game that night. I covered Xavier, well, in the afternoon, I should say,
yes,
and got home in the early evening, and we're putting the kid to sleep, and I'm thinking, I've got a little bit more work to do for the Xavier game, but I'll hurry up and get that done, and then I'll watch a movie with the wife or do whatever she wants to do. So I sort of ask her, what are you thinking? And she says, I'd kind of just like to read my book.
I love it.
So that meant I got to post up in the office for the last 5 hours of the night in a recliner with a laptop watching college basketball and the college football playoff game. It was a magnificent New Year's Eve, the best possible.
Did you at least celebrate the ringing of the new year with the wife?
She did not stay up for that. I did stay up past midnight, but yeah, she went to bed before that happened.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's a married couple 101 right there, bro. That is that is dead on.
Already hitting it in our second New Year's in. That's good. But you know what? This time of year, it's when we've got a crazy basketball season to work around. It's kind of nice to have a low key night like that.
No doubt.
What about you? Did you go out and do anything?
We did. We went to Burrow down on the levee with a pretty good group. Had dinner down there. Came back. Went to a friend's son's and his wife's house in Erlanger, and we celebrated the New Year there. Watched a little bit of the end of the college football game, then watched some New Year's Rockin' Eve. It's not the same without Dick Clark, mind you, but it's still New Year's Rockin' Eve, man. We played a game where we tried to guess the age of singers. That was the best part. Like Alanis Morissette was singing, and we were guessing the age. Who was it else that was singing? And I said
Ja Rule. I mean, how old is Ja Rule?
Ja Rule's got to be pushing 60, right?
I mean, I'll look it up because I have no idea.
That's what we kind of spent the whole time looking up Wikipedia for ages of singers.
Okay, so give me your actual guess on Ja Rule.
I'll say 57.
He's 48.
Damn.
A little younger than I would have thought. I would have thought he was right over 50.
He was living it up at an early age.
He was living it up. That's right.
How about that?
Oh, let's jump into some Bengals conversation here, Skinny. Their chances to make the playoffs currently sit at 10.5% according to ESPN's playoff projections. If it were to happen, meaning they beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh, the Broncos lose in Denver to the Chiefs, and the Dolphins lose to the Jets at MetLife, how much of a buzz would that create in the city? I mean, I'm not going to ask you to rank it because that's a silly concept, but would this be like a playoff win? Would it be like them going to the Super Bowl that one year? What would this feel like if they pulled off this improbable path to the playoffs?
That you're playing with house money, and how can that not be fun if you're a fan? I mean, listen, there was all the pressure in the world on the 2021 team once it got in the playoffs to at least win a game, right? Finally break that 3-decade-long hex of not winning a playoff game. And so there was a lot of pressure on that, even though that wasn't supposed to be the year, right? They're coming off, Joe Burrow's coming off the surgery. And at one point they were 5-4 and lo and behold, they make the playoffs. But it was more once they were in that year, there was all the pressure in the world. Then the next year it was, this team's just been to a Super Bowl. Why can't it make another run? Why can't it prove people that it wasn't a fluke? And they did that. And then last year, obviously, was the bummer of not making it. So I do think it would create a buzz because I think the other part you would have to go with is they've proven to you once they're in the Zach Taylor era, in the Joe Burrow era, they're a damn tough out.
Well, they're a damn tough out right now. I mean,
right.
People have been talking about no one wants to see them in the playoffs. And I think part of what would make this such a big deal to the city is you've had the angst building for so long with the fan base, because from week 4 on, we're already talking about how this team essentially played itself out of the playoffs when they started the way they did. So there's so much negativity built around this season already. If they were to somehow undo all of that by sneaking into the playoffs, I feel like, someone would just hit a big relief valve on this pressure gasket that's been building all year. And I think that would make for a kind of a weird week in the city leading up to that opening round of the playoffs. It would be fun to see happen. The question is, which of the legs, the Bengals needing to win, the Broncos needing to lose, the Dolphins needing to lose, which is most likely to happen, which is least likely to happen, in your opinion?
Least likely to happen is the Jets beating the Dolphins. I think that's the least likely to happen. I think it's the most likely. I guess if you want to go the other way, the most likely thing to happen is the Jets or the Dolphins beat the Jets. The least likely happening is the Chiefs beating the Broncos, in my opinion, just because. And I know Andy Reid's saying he's going to play some guys. And listen, Carson Wentz has won games in this league. He's won games in this league at a high level. So it's not like you're throwing in some stumble bum at quarterback.
Wait, what do you think is most likely to happen in favor for the Bengals? Like
in favor, I think the Bengals winning to
the Steelers.
Yeah, to create.
Yeah, I do too.
To create Sunday scoreboard watching.
I think that's the most likely leg that'll hit as well. I think the Bengals have a real chance to beat the Steelers. They're playing so well right now.
Pittsburgh's not
really struggling, but those other two games feel like a bit of a reach in each game, right?
Yeah, agreed. Could Carson Wentz? And that's the other part. You don't know how many backup offensive linemen are going to play. What's the wide receiver room look like? Who's playing on defense? All those things. We also have a Denver team, though, in my opinion. I mean, it's still a rookie quarterback. They're trying to snap a playoff drought, right? And that pressure gets real. They had a chance to do it the other night. All they had to do was settle for a tie, and they're in the playoffs today. They were able to run out the clock in that overtime period. They would have clinched. So they had a chance to do it themselves on that spot. Now you got to do it again. And will you stumble because of the pressure of the moment? The other one, though, the Jets one, just, God, watching them play against Buffalo last weekend on Red Zone, they were just a train wreck embarrassment.
And I thought they were kind of getting better leading up to that.
Too.
I thought Aaron Rodgers had been better and was turning a corner. It's like, oh, he's putting on a sort of resume display here at the end of the year to see what he's going to do before next season. And then he looked terrible again last week. So I don't know what to think going in. I like to think maybe they have a chance to pull that off. If Aaron Rodgers channels into what he was doing a couple weeks ago and plays as well as he's capable of playing, then maybe there's an outside chance. The Broncos and Chiefs game, I mean, I guess it still is the Chiefs. Even if it's a skeleton core that's playing out there for them, it's still the Chiefs, and they still have that winning mentality, and the Broncos don't.
Yeah, and I will say this, too. I mean, the NFL, you only can dress 48 guys for a game. So, some dudes have to play. They just have to play.
Right. It's not like it's not walk-ons.
Right.
It's
right.
Not that type of situation. Do you think this is a narrative that's been going online, social media, sports talk a little bit? There are some people that keep throwing out this idea that the Chiefs do not want the Bengals to get into the playoffs, that they are worried about keeping the Bengals out of the playoffs and might not want to win for that reason. Do you think that's any legitimate at all? Do you think there's any legitimacy to that?
I think if push came to shove and you asked them that question, that their answer would be, no, we don't want the Bengals in the playoffs, but you're not going to play like that. Listen, whoever goes on the field for Kansas City on Sunday, be it starter, backup, whatever, especially if it's a backup, you're playing for your NFL life at that point. If you're a backup in the NFL, there's a decent chance you may not be back around next season because there's going to be a fresh crop of players to replace you. So you're auditioning for somebody else. So even if that's the case, and again, they don't owe the Bengals anything. I think you and I talked about this last week. Listen, Bengals put themselves in this position. Kansas City did what Kansas City needed to do to put Kansas City in a position. But listen, these guys, they're not going to go out there and just lay down because, again, if I'm a backup player, this is my one chance. I'm going to get 65 snaps in the game where I normally get 2. I'm going to go show what I can do to put it on tape, whether it's for these guys to keep me around for another year or some other NFL team I need to ship my tape off to.
There's that part of it. And then there's also the part of, Skinny, they're not going to play the Bengals in the first round.
Right. That's right.
Why would they not? If they think the Bengals are the most dangerous team, why would they not want the Bengals on the other side, wrecking shop and potentially sneaking through with a terrible defense instead of them having to play the Bills?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Or Buffalo beat you this year. Granted, they beat you in Buffalo, but Buffalo beat Kansas City this year. Would you rather the Bengals maybe go to Buffalo and steal a win and face the Bengals in Arrowhead, or face the team that's beaten you this year?
That's my point. I mean, like, if the Bengals are in and you really think they're that dangerous, then there's also the potential that they wreck shop on the other side, beat the Bills, and now you face a team with a weak defense that's a complete wild card. You don't know what you're going to get from them from week to week. Granted, they have Joe Burrow, but like this whole idea that the Bengals have owned the Chiefs is a little bit of a misnomer to begin with. They really have not.
Neither one's owned the other. They've played great games.
games.
Yes, great games. It's come down to a couple of plays for both teams.
Right, which may be scary, but I mean, I think playing the Bills and Josh Allen this year is just as scary. So probably more so. So I don't really think there's anything to the idea that the Chiefs don't want the Bengals in the playoffs. But I do get the idea that any team that's looking at the way Joe Burrow is playing right now at the end of the year is a little bit concerned about having to face Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T Higgins. That's just a reality of the NFL.
Yeah, and again, to the point of it, for the players that are playing in that game, they're not trying to tank because they're trying to save their jobs. You know, I know some people suggest, well, the Jets got nothing to play for. You're going to tank for a better draft pick. No, the guys out on the field are trying to play for their lives. The guy coaching in New York is coaching for whatever his epitaph says when he gets fired at the end of the year. This interim guy. Same thing for Antonio Pierce last. These guys are probably done. I don't care what happens in the future. My future ain't with you guys.
Right. No, that's a good point as well. All right. Joe Burrow, quote unquote, sent another message to the front office this week during his media availability. Let's take a listen to what he had to say, and then I want to get your reaction on that.
Whenever a great player leaves, you wish you could have found a way to keep them. You don't want to make a living out of letting great players leave the building. And I think that's why you got to do everything you can to get those deals done early.
All right. So that's what Joe Burrow had to say when asked about what it's like watching former players that were good players for the Bengals go on and have good seasons with other teams. What were your thoughts on that message, Skinny?
Well, again, it started in Dallas, right? With his comments about, I think we can find a way to get T done. I think it's, again, him continuing to play out in public to put some pressure on the front office. Because I can only imagine Joe Burrow going through another season like this next year, what that is like and how he handles that. Because I think he's handled it terrifically this year. I do. But I also think if they don't do something to at least try to re-sign T, and maybe you can't, maybe the numbers in such the stratosphere that it doesn't make sense to do it, doesn't make fiscal sense to do it, that they opt to then spend their money wisely elsewhere. And that's the other thing you're counting on. But I just think it's Joe publicly letting this play out to try to put pressure on the front office because he's seen how things have operated. We can relitigate the letting Jesse Bates walk all we want. The fact that T and Jamar didn't get done. And are you going to let another Jamar offseason fester, even though he's under contract and not get an extension done until after the 2025 season? Or what's that going to look like again in training camp? Because I do think that affected the slow start. Again, I don't blame Jamar for how he handled his business, but I think it might have affected that opening game and the way they were ready to play that opening game for sure. Because they didn't even know until the Saturday of that he was even going to play in the game, for goodness sakes.
That loss was so frustrating at the time. I said it for 2 or 3 weeks. I harped on it to the point that people got annoyed and said to quit talking about it. But looking back now, it's like, that's everything to this season. Them giving away that game, which they have no excuse for. There's no reason. The Washington one, you can kind of understand.
Look back and go, they're pretty good. Yeah.
That one is inexcusable. And it's the type of thing that's happened to this group with Zach Taylor and this group of players time and again to start the season. So that one really is frustrating and hard to forgive with this group because of what they've been able to do here at the end of the season. They'd be in a much better spot, obviously, had they won that game. Skinny, I guess the other thing I had about T Higgins is, do you think there's a disconnect between Joe Burrow and the front office right now on these topics? Or do you think this is more just he's talking with them, they're on the same page, but he also wants to reemphasize it publicly to make sure there's pressure on them?
Yeah, and keep in mind, they can't negotiate with T Higgins until after the season. That's part of the franchise tag. So there's really, right. There could be backroom stuff for all I know, but there can be no real formal negotiation process. But I think this is him saying there needs to be one, and when the time comes, we need to get this dude signed. The fact that T's even talked openly about, I don't need to be paid number one wide receiver money. I kind of got it good where I'm at, but he still needs to be paid his money, and I get all those things. You're the Bengals. Again, we're going to litigate this a ton in the offseason. Do you then weigh the injury risk factor? Because it happened again this year. It's real. He missed 5 games. He's still got a chance. Actually, he has a 160-yard game, which is a lot, but he still has an outside shot at a 1,000-yard season despite missing 5 full games this year. But this is not a one-off for him from the injury department, right? It's pretty much every year he's dealt with some hamstring leg issues. And do you weigh that into the equation when you're weighing in the contract structure? So I do think that it's Joe saying, I want to keep my core guys. I mean, they're going out for the coin toss again as a trio. Part of it is, you're kind of on a streak since you've done that. So as we all know, everybody in sports is superstitious. So you keep the good luck rolling. But I think it's also, again, the emblematic thing of, are we really seeing these guys for the last time together as a trio? Are we really doing this?
Have these recent performances by T Higgins, some of the incredible plays he's made and the way he stepped up in these big game moments, again, we've seen it from him before, but doing it again at the highest level, has it changed the narrative at all or changed your opinion at all of how they should handle this situation?
No, and that's where I don't know where a contract for him lies, right? I just don't know what that figure is that's fair for both, because I don't think I pay him number one wide receiver money. I'm sorry, I just don't, because the injury situation is real. And yes, when he plays, he has the opportunity and oftentimes will ball out. And the duo certainly plays well opposite each other when they're playing. But again, you have to mitigate that with the history is what it is, man. That's past performance a lot of times does dictate the future of this guy has dealt with hamstring issues all along, going back to college. And it creeps up and it creeps up and it creeps up. Boy, when he plays, it's great. So again, where's that money line at? Is it at a number that the Bengals just aren't comfortable with because they know he's going to miss 4 or 5 or 6 games, or at least they're leaning on that because that's kind of the history? Or does he say, I will take less because I do miss some games and I do have a great situation. And oh, by the way, because I'm taking $2 to $5 million less a year, I'm still making good change in a place where I'm having a good time and enjoying myself being in an offense I like with a quarterback I like. So I think both sides have to weigh all those things. I don't think it's as cut as dried as pay the man. I don't think it's that. I really don't. I think it's what is the fair market value and what is he willing to take? And I just don't know where that, I honestly will be quite frank, I don't know where that line is.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. I also think the plays he made and seeing him be at the height of his power, the stuff he's done the last few weeks have been as good as he's ever been, I think.
I thought Saturday was the best game he's ever played.
Right. So I think at least that tells you there's no lingering damage from the recent injury history that he's had. Yes, that's a concern going forward, that maybe he's fragile and he's going to consistently be injured, but there doesn't seem to be like any concern that these nagging injuries are taking a toll on him and he's no longer the same athlete that he was a year ago.
And I think maybe they've come to a management plan with this too, because remember, he's been limited in a lot of weeks and it's always been, oh gosh, is T going to play? Yeah. And we come to a Zach Taylor on the day before when he kind of runs through the injury stuff and it's, yeah, T's good to go. We just tried to manage him. Maybe to their credit, they found a way to manage this throughout a week to where you're not worrying about him getting hurt.
Some of the matchup problems that he causes, the catches that he makes, they do look like number one type of production, number one type of skills. But I think you also have to remember that he's playing opposite Jamar Chase.
Yes.
And that's a huge factor. How good do you look when you're the guy and you don't have Jamar Chase taking the pressure off of you? You have to take the pressure off of somebody else. And now you have bracketed coverages and all these double looks and all the different things that teams do to try to take away Jamar Chase. What happens when that's focused on you? That's the other thing that's yet to be seen. And we don't know the answer to that. He may be great, but I would agree with you that to me, I'm not willing to give him number one type money, but I'm also definitely willing to do everything I can to try to meet him somewhere in between maybe number one and number two receiver money and see where that lands for both sides that is feasible.
Yeah, and I think that's where the firing of the agent comes in of David Mulugeta, that he's got a number. He's going to stick to it. He's usually done right by his clients. He got Jesse Bates paid. It worked itself out where the Bengals in this side, they never came to even close to a number. And so, maybe this is a case of T understanding, look, I know my agents try to do best by me, but I got to have somebody willing to negotiate. And listen, the Bengals aren't, I said this on TV, they're not saints in this either. I mean, they sometimes will set a bar awful damn low to where it's like, really? That's kind of a slap in the face. You can't at least get to here to start with, and then we can talk. And so there has to be the yin and the yang of this. And again, I'm not going to try to be a genius on this. And anybody that tries to prove that they are when it comes to where the figure is, it's just a guessing game. I don't know what it's going to be. And, hopefully we do find out. Hopefully this gets played out enough to where we know Bengals kind of offered this. T wanted that. And look at the gap. It was never going to come together. And maybe you go, well, damn it, you should have gotten to where T was. And maybe there's a group that says, no, I think closer to the Bengals number was the right number. I just have no earthly idea what that number is. And don't forget, you can do this too. You can do one more thing. It's going to piss fans off when I say it, and it may tick him off. But yeah, they can franchise tag him again. And the one thing I'll say about T Higgins, playing on the tag this year, dude's nothing but a pro. He's nothing but a pro. Now, maybe that changes if they do it again, right? Maybe that's, hey, you guys are going to stick me again. Now, I will say getting stuck on the franchise tag number is not an awful number. It's going to probably be, I haven't looked at what next year is. I'd guess 25 mil guaranteed. I mean, that's 46 mil in guarantees in back-to-back years you would have made. That's nothing to sneeze at. But do you do it again? And then this time you do risk alienating the player rather.
All right. I want to ask you about something that I have never really heard much about in previous seasons, and all of a sudden is a hot topic in the city of Cincinnati, and that is the wide receiver triple crown. Jamar Chase is leading all the categories needed: yardage, receptions, touchdowns as a receiver. Looks like he's well positioned to win the triple crown. He's got a 133-yard lead in receiving yardage, an 8 reception lead in receptions, and a 4 touchdown lead in terms of receiving touchdowns. How big of a deal is a receiver's triple crown, Skinny? I just don't recall hearing this in previous seasons, people talking about this.
Maybe because it's rare, I guess. Maybe that's why it's not talked about, is it is rare to do that. Usually the guy with a lot of catches is the 10-yard per catch guy, right? The underneath guy who's getting a lot of the dirty catches, dirty yards, all those things. And usually the guy with the home run yardage it doesn't have as many catches, but he's averaging 19, 20 yards a catch. And, the touchdowns, it was funny because, I've written about this, and we all have for weeks, that he's, trying to get there and has a chance to win it. And this week when I actually went to crunch the numbers, to your point, what the differences were as I was doing it, the one that stood out to me surprisingly was the 4 touchdown edge. That was the one that caught me off guard. I thought that was going to be way, way tighter for some. I mean, I thought somebody out there had 14 or 15 touchdown receptions, and they don't. I mean, I think it's a big deal to him. I do. And I don't think that means he's a selfish player who's in it for the personal glory and all those things. But I think he just, it lets you know that, I bet on myself because I did come back and play this year, despite all the things that went on. The price is now going up for me because I've done this. And I think that, it is significant that I wouldn't think it'd be significant if they force feed him the ball to get him 20 catches in a game that's the game they have to win. And somehow because they did that, they lose. I don't think that's the case. I just think that the normal flow of a normal Jamar Chase game, even whatever coverage they throw at him, and if they do, to your point, there's T on the other side. If you want to throw all the coverage at Jamar, he's going to come up with a decent enough game to probably salt it away.
Well, you mentioned about T Higgins being a complete pro this year while playing on the franchise tag. I think this signifies that Jamar Chase deserves a lot of credit.
Absolutely.
Too, because we went into the season wondering, what was he going to be like in the locker room? With the way he kind of threw Zach Taylor under the bus in training camp and the way things were headed, he seemed pretty disgruntled with the way the contract situation was handled right before the start of the season. And maybe it did take a week or 2 or 3 for this team to get up to speed with him fully on board and everything. But once they hit their stride, I mean, he's been incredible and has never taken a playoff and has been as good as he's ever been. That says something about who he is and his character too. And like you said, he's obviously going to get paid handsomely for that, probably by the Bengals, I would assume. But he's going to make a ton of money because of this. And so that's good for him. I am impressed by the way he's handled this season.
I agree.
Because I honestly thought, especially with the way the Bengals started the season, that this was going to be kind of a lost year for him.
Hey, at 4-8, even though they were mathematically still alive, which they still are today, I mean, at that point, those two could have made some business decisions, right? They really could have. Now, Jamar at that point was talking Triple Crown, and so that was probably still in play, and you got to play to win it. I mean, you can't suddenly go, I got an ouchie hamstring or I rolled my ankle. But to your point, I mean, he's been nothing but a pro. Was a little grouchy the first few weeks of the season for different reasons, snapped at us a couple of times after post-game interviews. I think once we got him out of the locker room and up to the podium for Thursdays, I think that calmed things down instead of everybody crowding around him, because he's been really good when he's gone to the podium, and I think that was a good move for everybody. It made for a less hectic locker room scene too. To your point, I think both those guys have done that, and credit to both of them.
The other thing about it is, from a personal glory standpoint or notoriety standpoint, we are in an era right now where I don't think there's a clear top receiver in the NFL. There are some really, really elite guys with Justin Jefferson, who he's close to, and I'm sure there's a personal rivalry there, even though they're friendly. Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams,
Amon-Ra St. Brown,
CD Lamb. There's a number of guys out there that could probably lay claim and have a legitimate claim to being the top receiver in the NFL. To pull off a Triple Crown year when you have all those guys at the at the top of their careers. That's pretty special.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think that's why it's meaningful for him.
Yeah. All right, let's switch gears here to college basketball, Skinny, unless you have anything else on the Bengals or the NFL.
All good.
All right, we'll start with Cincinnati because they're kind of the most interesting team right now. Currently ranked 16th in the country still. They're coming off a loss to Kansas State, though. They hit that loss the first game on the road in Big 12 play. 70-67 was the final there. They'll come back and host Arizona on Saturday at 2:30. They've got a really difficult road ahead of them the next few games. What stood out to you about this first road loss to Kansas State?
If you take Simas Lukosius out of actions, and I know Dan Skillings is good, but that really affects them on the offensive end. It really does. And I don't like their offensive stuff. I've said that for weeks now. And I wouldn't, and I know some fans probably have already done this. I haven't looked at social media or message boards or any of that. I'm sure the sky is falling for UC fans because you lost at a team that was 6-5 coming in and hadn't played all that well. I'm just going to tell everybody, if you're an SEC fan, if you're a Big 12 fan, those two leagues in particular, there's no layup on the road. There just is not a single solitary layup on the road. I don't care who you think it is, what their record may have been non-con, how well you think you're playing. There ain't no layups on the road. And so if you can't run your stuff and you can't, there are some handful of breakdowns in transition defense, and Dan Skillings wants to go get every offensive rebound known to mankind, and that sometimes puts him out of defensive position. And that's some things I think you can hear Wes's frustration in the postgame. I think there are things like that he realizes we can fix those things. We have to. But you know what you need to fix? You better hire an offensive coordinator and get your offense right, man, because I don't like what they run on the offensive. I don't even know what the hell they run on the offensive end.
I think you saw a couple things in this game, especially late. One is that, and we talked about this with pretty much every local team this year to some extent, except for maybe NKU, but all the high major ones, we kind of talked about the lack of a go-to option in end-of-game situations. And before the season, we were wondering, we like the players on this UC roster. It feels like they have a lot of good, secondary options or maybe 1A type options, 1B type options, but who is the alpha go-to end-of-game guy? The answer right now is Simas Lukosius. And I think you saw the issues with having Simas Lukosius as your go-to guy at the end of this game. He's just not that dynamic of a player. He's too easy to take away as a defense because you have to run him off screens and run.
Yes, but that's the other part. They are so bad screening. I mean, that's, if you were a better screening team, he doesn't need a lot of room to get the shot off, and he's got a quick release. They just don't screen worth a damn.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think you saw is they tend to waste a lot of the shot clock, run it down without really running anything that you don't really have to guard them for a lot of the shot clock.
Right.
So then they get late in the shot clock to where they can't really put you in a disadvantaged situation where you're forced to foul them. They never get to the free throw line and they never draw fouls in those important moments like a lot of teams do. And I think so much of that is because they're operating on a short shot clock a lot of times, or in a situation where they haven't really run much action before they're trying to score. So it's like your defense is set, it's ready to defend, and you really just have to guard one or two quick things right before they take their shot.
And every team in this league is going to have a dude. I mean, Coleman Hawkins is a dude, and so Coleman Hawkins can carry a team on nights, and that's the Big 12. And again, I still think this is a going to be a solid seeded NCAA tournament team. UC, but don't get the 0-4 start that we talked about. That's a possibility is very much in play. Very much in play.
Yeah, I mean, we were just mentioning that before. They host Arizona on Saturday, which is ranked number 21 in KenPom. They play Baylor next, which is 16th in KenPom.
On the road, right? Baylor's
on
a road
the road.
game. Yeah.
Kansas, number 11, they host, which is number 11 in KenPom. That could very easily be a 4-game skid all of a sudden. And the thing I would say is this Kansas State loss isn't a problem for UC overall. It's not a big deal. Like you said, in the Big 12 this year, losses like that are going to happen. But an 0-4 losing skid to start Big 12 play would be a problem, would put you behind the 8 ball, and would make life difficult in terms of an at-large bid. So you have to avoid that. And this is where you get back into the will they be able to pull out close games this year? Because you're probably going to be in 3
ton of them
games coming up here.
Oh, you're going to be in a ton of them throughout the whole conference thing. And if you don't have that guy or they take that guy away, I just don't know what they do at the end of games. And again, this is where the whole goes back to Aziz Bandaogo does certain things against certain teams really well, and he has his own skill set, which is mostly defensive oriented, but you can't do anything with him on offense. You literally can do nothing with him on the offensive end.
Yeah, I'm to the point with their offense that I think Jizzle James is kind of my guy.
I'm with you.
He's the best creator. He's so dynamic. I think I find ways to ride him in those moments because he's the toughest. He seems mentally capable of handling the pressure of those situations. And he's so damn strong and physically gifted that I think he just gives you the best chance of maybe drawing a foul or making something out of nothing if everything else breaks down.
Yeah.
So that would be my answer. Xavier beat Seton Hall 94-72 on Tuesday. They travel to Georgetown for an 8 p.m. tip on Friday. Skinny, how do you sort out XU's last three games where you have two close losses to UConn and Marquette, which, by the way, got them to a point of like 8-5. Where is this season headed? You're probably out of contention for an at-large bid, or at least it feels that way this early in the year before you even get to the holidays. But then you have the convincing win over Seton Hall. How do you weigh all those things? Because I think it could be looked at positively or really negatively, depending on your viewpoint.
Yeah, I'm not sure I look at it at all negatively. I think I look at it really positively that you played two good teams, one on their home court, down to the wire, had a shot to win both, and then you did what you're supposed to do to a Seton Hall team. I guess the thing that was encouraging, and I didn't see the game, Rick. I listened to a chunk of it that afternoon because I was doing a bunch of Bengals stuff that day. It was a Bengals work day. But it sounded like a somewhat encouraging performance from John Hughley.
It was, I would say, his best performance for sure. Now, can you rely? Seton Hall has no front court.
No, understood.
So that is helpful in that situation. And was it a performance that suggested, oh yeah, he's ready to start giving you more production in big games or tight games? Not really. But Sean Miller has said all along, he'll be more ready to help us around Christmas time and in the second semester. And I guess you're starting to see that a little bit. I mean, he at least gave them double-digit minutes. Yeah. And if they can get 10 minutes out of him per game where he's not completely killing them, then that's helpful, if nothing else, just so they can rest somebody.
Yeah, and it feels like they're sorting out the haves and the have-nots, and there's a lot of have-nots in the league that now you look and you go, all right, you can steal a road win there, and a road win there, and a road win there, and a road win there. I'd probably stop at those. Butler, DePaul, Providence, Seton Hall. You can steal some of those road wins, and then again hold serve at home against the teams that you're probably better than 50-50 against. Marquette, you're not better than 50-50 against, even at home. They're a better team, but you took them down to the wire. You do some of that, and you probably still finish mid-pack in the league. I don't think that's going to be enough to get you in at large, but at least gives you a fighting chance when you go to New York.
Yeah, and that's sort of the point I've been making all along. The problem is because of the resume you had going into the holidays, you put yourself behind the eight ball. So now you need to win 2/3 of your games the rest of the way. And
that's a big ask.
That feels like a huge ask. And also, I think the fact that, okay, you can say they played really well against two of the best teams in the conference in UConn and Marquette, and now they have a convincing win against Seton Hall. Maybe they're just playing good basketball over those 3-game stretch. But you can also make the point of, but what do they really have to show for quote unquote playing well? They weren't able to find a way to win 2 close games, which ended similarly to the way all of their close games have ended this year. Cincinnati, Michigan, guys not making good plays, not making good decisions, terrible offensive possessions and turnovers in crunch time. Those things keep reoccurring for this group. There didn't seem to be any improvement when those things happened against UConn or Marquette. And also against UConn, you shot the ball tremendously in that game from 3-point range. The shot makers off the charts. You didn't find a way to steal either one of those games. I don't know if Seton Hall is going to win any games in Big East play this year.
They're bad.
You could very easily look at this and just say, well, what do they have to show for all of that quote unquote good play? I think it's wait and see with Xavier right now. It's like, what comes the next few games? If you rattle off a few wins over this very winnable stretch here, you go 3-1 over your next 4. Now we're talking. Maybe this team is starting to turn a corner and starting to learn some things about itself and play a better brand of basketball. I will say I think Dante Maddox is going to be key for them going forward. They've got to get consistent production out of him. I know Sean Miller wasn't happy with his defense in this game against Seton Hall, but he did at least give you 17 points and good minutes off the bench. You were able to play him. So I think that's something.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, NKU lost at Robert Morris 97-93 in triple overtime over the weekend, and then beat Purdue Fort Wayne 69-68 after trailing by 15 4 minutes into the second half. They'll host Green Bay on Saturday at 1 p.m. It maybe went the opposite way fans expected, Skinny. We were talking last week. You wanted to have a 2-1 week here with these 3 games coming up. I think a lot of fans felt they would probably win that game at Robert Morris. Maybe the home game against Purdue Fort Wayne, who's picked to finish first in the league, would be a tough ask. Instead, they switched those two. They still end up 1-1 in those games, and you would like their chances going into the game against Green Bay.
Yeah, Green Bay's horrible. The Doug Gottlieb led Green Bay fighting Phoenix. I will say this: the comeback. I think you can look back on this and go, that's when NKU got its season going, because you lose a tough one in triple overtime where those are just guys were exhausted out on the floor, and you have to turn around and roughly 48 hours later, travel back home to then play the number 1 team in the league, or the team picked to win it. And you're down 15, and that could have easily been fold tent time and go, you know what, we're done. And instead, they claw back, fight back, and end up winning the game in overtime. And you have a new lease on life to some degree. Now you're looking and going, all right, now we are going to fight for the 1 seed for the conference tournament. I just that turnaround is just huge for this season and the chance to get the seed you want to get to make a run for the 1-bid Horizon League.
It really is. And Darren Horn said something in the post-game conversation we had with them where he's like, I know Sam Vincent and Trey Robinson have been there before. I know they're champions. I have all the belief in the world in them. But he said, it's almost like sometimes they need to see it again. They need to remember that they're champions and this is what they do. He's like, the plays that they made at the end of this game to carry us. He's like, Sam wasn't great all game, but he made the plays and we put the ball in his hands at the very end of the game where we needed that final basket in overtime that won the game. He had the game-winning assist to Keena Tijere. Trey Robinson had 26 points and had tons of big buckets and plays down the stretch of this one. It did kind of feel like one of those, okay, we know who we are now. We'll roll with these guys. These are our leaders. We've kind of figured out how to play without Marquez Work around to shoulder the load on offense. And it really did feel like kind of a turning point moment for them, to your point.
Yeah, no. And I think it's when you're going to look back on it was the turning point moment.
Yeah. All right. Kentucky beat Brown 88-54. I mean, I don't really have much from this game, Skitty. It's exactly what you would expect coming off the embarrassing loss that they had against a team that was completely undermanned. They do have a big game coming up against number 6 Florida on Saturday at 11 a.m. Strange start time there for that one. Yeah,
that is a real strange start time. Maybe Florida won't get out of bed. I mean, this is a really good Florida team. If this had been Kentucky that had beaten Ohio State and did what they did in the non-con, you'd say, all right, bring on the challenge. Now it's like, oh boy, are we good enough to win this game? And if we don't win this game, you can't lose serve very often at home in this league, even against good teams, because there's so many hard teams you got to play on the road. And then the doubts start to creep in a little bit, right? Of, okay, the last 2 games against good opponents, I don't even know if Ohio State would be qualified as a good opponent, but Florida certainly does. That would be a bit of a gut punch to lose this at home.
Do you think fans are starting to get uncomfortable with the idea of like them having a loss like they had, and then Mark Pope coming out and saying, yeah, we're not quite getting to 33-point attempts per game. We got to shoot more threes.
Well, I think he's right, but they also need to create better opportunities for those threes. It felt like the Ohio State game was everything was a contested 3 at the end of the shot clock, and they had no other answer or option offensively. And that to me is the only thing that really sticks out to me. 2 things, that and the inability to guard really good point guards like they couldn't against Ohio State or Louisville for that matter. But the offensive end, it just feels like when teams have taken their actions away and gotten into them out on the perimeter and contested them on threes, they don't really have a second answer to that.
Yeah, it's funny. They're dealing with that. Xavier's very much dealing with that. They've really struggled with that. And then the NKU Purdue Fort Wayne game, that's exactly what happened. That's how NKU got down by 15 in that game. Purdue Fort Wayne just denied passes, took away passing lanes. That seems to be kind of the method of teams that are using all these zoom actions, rotating the ball sideline, wing to wing, rotating it through the top of the key. Seems like a lot of defenses go into that. Let's just deny, break up, cause some chaos, disrupt this stuff so they can't get into a flow. And they're really causing some disruption for some of these opposing offenses. And by the way, what NKU did was just say, okay, clear it out. We'll go one-on-one and we'll let our best player go against your defender on him and go one-on-one. And that worked. And for Kentucky, unfortunately, I don't think they've got that one-on-one guy, right? Yeah. So when you take away that stuff and you're in them in footsteps and you're in them on the dribble handoff and they have no room to shoot it, and then they can't go around you because they're not good enough, that certainly leads to some stagnant offenses. It's the same thing we've seen with Xavier. I mean, it feels like we're watching similar issues for all these teams, and they're running a very similar system, all of them. And I think they're seeing defense and they're saying, okay, we're going to stay home on your shooters. We're not going to play help defense on your drivers. We're going to get in your passing lane, get deflection, disrupt what you're trying to run in terms of all these dribble handoffs and everything. And we're going to make you make shots over top of our guys one-on-one. And if you're not athletic enough to do that, your mid-major transfers that came up from lower levels, then you're not going to be able to beat our defense. I think that's part of the issue that Xavier and we'll see if it continues to impact Kentucky or not. Yeah. They had issues with it against Ohio State, but they've also looked really good in some games.
Yeah, but they've also overmatched some teams in some games too.
Yeah. But I still think jury's out on how much of an issue
I do too.
For Xavier, I think it's kind of their biggest issue right now.
Yeah.
All right, let's switch gears here to the college football playoff. We'll start with Ohio State just because Skinny, they smack Oregon 41-21. How is this possibly the same Ohio State team that lost to Michigan in the final week of the regular season? This doesn't make any sense.
It goes back to show you how much of a mindset Ryan Day has coaching in that game. And the other part to it is I still believe they obviously didn't trust Kyle Howard down the stretch of that game because I think he was concussed. I think you had a quarterback playing concussed, and they realized it. Plus, their sphincters are tight, and I think it was all the perfect storm because they had the chance to then take a deep breath. Kyle Howard get his brain scrambled back in the right direction, and they're the team that we thought they were. Or Will Howard. I keep calling him Kyle.
I know what. Who's Kyle Howard? Did you coach a kid named Kyle Howard?
I must have coached. Yeah, maybe I did. I don't know why I call him.
I played soccer with a Kyle Howard back in second or third grade. He was.
I did that with the Bengals wide receiver Malone. What was his name from a few years ago? Josh Malone, was it? I called him something different for something. No, I called him something else. Yeah, I don't know what I called him, but it was. I kept calling him out. I kept writing that. It's stuck in my head. But yeah, Will Howard, I think, played with his brain scrambled, and now he's not. And this team has dudes, right? We even talked about it at the Michigan game. This team can win the national championship. Will that be enough for Ohio State fans to forgive Ryan Day for losing to Michigan? Because they are good enough to do it.
Well, you got to love Ohio State fans. They were fire Ryan Day, but now they are. How would you ever doubt this team with all this talent? Yes. You guys were insane. You stupid media people who doubted us. You're insane.
You doubted yourselves, man.
I love following it. It's fantastic. The Buckeye fans are truly the best. Their fight with Kirk Herbstreit is just reaching epic levels. The play calling, though, Skinny, it's glaring. I mean, truly, it's just throw the ball up to the best player on the field, Jeremiah Smith, regardless of what the defense is.
Yep.
It's kind of like what we talked about with the Bengals and Jamar Chase a lot early in the season. And then as soon as you start doing that and you find more creative ways to force feed your best player the ball, all of a sudden everything falls into place from an offensive standpoint for Ohio State. And right now with the way their defense is playing, I mean, truly, Skinny, who else do you see winning this national championship? Do you see them as the heavy favorite?
I do. I'm big on Notre Dame, and I'm actually saying that before they play the Georgia game. They haven't played it yet. We're doing this on the same day the game's being played, but I'm still pretty bullish on them. I really am.
Ohio State is the betting favorite to win the national championship now at plus 110. So almost even money. You get your money back to bet on them. Texas would be next in line at plus 380. Penn State plus 460. Then Georgia, Notre Dame, who have yet to play, are plus 750. So a little bit different with their odds. Do you like taking Ohio State at plus 110, or is that not enough value there?
I wouldn't mind taking Ohio State for if I had $100 for 70 and then put 30 on Notre Dame, and that way I can win a little bit of money no matter which one of those wins it.
OSU plus 110 or the field at minus 134? Which do you like better if you have to take one side there?
I think I take Ohio State at plus 110. I think that's good value.
All right, we're not going to do our betting segment today for those games because they'll be after our show next week. So we'll save those for next week. We don't know what the other semifinal matchup is just yet. But Ohio State did open as a 5.5 point favorite against Texas in one of the semifinal games. What are your thoughts on that number? Are you shocked by it, or you think that's about right?
I was going to guess 7-ish. I mean, Texas has been really stagnant at times on offense down the stretch. I mean, I'll go back to even the Kentucky game, where they just go through these lulls. And then for whatever reason, despite that talent on defense, teams have done some things against them. I just think this Ohio State team is at least a touchdown better.
Yeah, I was expecting 6.5 or 7.5.
Yeah, I said 7. Yeah.
And we didn't get either of that.
We might get it to there. We might get it to there by the time the betting is closed.
Yeah, I took it at 5.5 right when it opened because I'm worried that it's going to get up over a touchdown at some point. But that's a long way for it to go. I was surprised it started at 5.5. All right, Texas pulled out a 39-31 win win over Arizona State in double overtime. It was the only good game we really got through the first
game
rounds here so far. But it was it was almost like Arizona State took the punch to start initially, and then they were like, all right, let's just give the ball to our best player, do what we do, play our game. And once they settled in, it was a real fight all of a sudden.
I mean, and I hate to be overly dramatic, but that was a heroic performance from Sam Scatterbo. It really, I mean, he throws a touchdown pass. Wasn't a great throw, but he throws a touchdown pass. They send him on a fly pattern down the sideline, and he shows a way to kind of shield off a defender to then make a 60-yard catch. Then he has all those tough yards in between the tackles. The guy was a freaking, and all this after throwing up on the sideline on top of it all.
So I'm not going to see like who should have won the Heisman because I think Travis Hunter deserved that.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
And other things enter the equation when you talk about who deserves to win the Heisman. But just like, who would you want to turn on for a Saturday game afternoon if you had one more game to watch of this college football season? Would you choose Cam Scatterbo, Ashton Genty, the running back for Boise State, or Travis Hunter?
I'd probably do Travis Hunter because I'm still freaking flabbergasted that guy plays 100 snaps a game at the level he plays it at two extremely important positions. That still is flabbergasting to me. He was clearly the Heisman Trophy winner. You can't convince me otherwise. But that Scatterbo performance was just – it was – again, I thought it was heroic to watch. I really did.
It was, and he's got sort of like the superhero thing where the ball almost always is in his hands.
Yes.
Too, right?
Yes.
It's a little bit different with Travis Hunter because he might only have 6 catches in a game.
Right.
You know, and like he'll lock you down on defense, but that means the ball might not be thrown his way the whole time. And then he gets 6 catches, but you're so focused on him. Other guys are tearing you up. And like his impact doesn't always necessarily come because the ball is in his hands at all times. Whereas Cam Scatterbo is like, hold on, you throw the touchdown for us too.
Yeah, right.
You got to do everything for us right now. And he did it, or damn near did it, I should say.
Damn near did it.
Ended up losing the game in multiple overtimes, but what a performance by him personally, and he put on the show that everybody wanted from him who hadn't seen him yet this year.
And I know everybody's been disappointed by the way the matchups have turned out. I mean, the Ohio State-Oregon game was still a good matchup. Nobody's going to argue that was not a good matchup. It just turned out to be a blowout game. Yeah. But that Arizona State-Texas game, that's when you go back, that's what's cool about the college. I mean, Arizona State, which was picked to finish last in the league, and, all of a sudden they turn their season around and they get in the playoffs and, they don't belong, or, they don't belong. No, they stood toe-to-toe with Texas thanks to one dude, basically. That was phenomenal to watch.
It's like we talked about last week. They got their chance.
Yes.
That's what you want. You're going to get some blowouts in this, the way it's done, but you want those teams to get their chance. You wanted to see Oregon and Ohio State get that rematch. Maybe it should have been deeper into the playoffs. Right. I can understand that argument, certainly, but we wanted to see that rematch, even though it turned out to be a blowout. And we wanted to see this Arizona State team get their chance. They almost made good on it. Penn State beat Boise State 31-14 on Tuesday. That was almost a good game. Boise State, I thought, made it somewhat interesting for some of it. Ashton Genty was mostly bottled up, but still took about 100 guys to tackle on every carry that he had. I thought Penn State's defense was incredible the way they did that.
You know what that looked like? That looked like a good Big Ten team against a Mountain West team. That's what that looked like. I mean, that's what that was going to always be.
I think
again, I don't mind. That's the thing. I say that, and I said that, I guess, with disdain. But you know what? I don't mind that. I don't. Yeah. They earned their way in. They got their shot. It's okay. It's okay.
The playoff is so great for teams like Penn State and Notre Dame too. This is what the playoff, like who benefited the most from the playoffs were those teams who were just outside being the elite of the elite, the top 4. That are never getting into the actual playoff.
Yeah, we're probably the 5th or 6th best team in the country. Watch us go now.
Yeah, but now they're in and they've got their chance. And Skinny, one underrated part of this, and any college basketball fan whose team has made a run in the NCAA tournament to the Sweet 16 or beyond can vouch for this. There is a momentum factor to winning in rounds.
Yeah,
Penn
sure.
State fans right now are on an incredible ride. The momentum's building for them. And yes, the storylines, the narratives of James Franklin loses this next game are going to be off the charts negative.
Absolutely.
I totally understand that. But that's part of the fun. I mean, the excitement that's building for that fan base as they're winning playoff games after never being able to make the playoff previously is pretty awesome for them. And I think that's part of the playoff system that's been forgotten about as well. I'm really curious to see like what happens if Penn State or Notre Dame win a national championship.
Wow.
That would be
you're
crazy.
Right. Would be.
Do you think the bye impacted the slow starts for the losing teams?
That's possible, but I don't know how you fix that portion of it. I mean, that's just you have buys during the season, right? I mean, you have most teams have 2 buys built into the schedule, and some of it is you do that strategically to get guys healthy before maybe a big matchup to give yourself some time to prepare. All of those things. But yeah, I'm not going to buy into that narrative that costs those teams. Arizona State on paper was an underdog. Boise State was an underdog. Ohio State or Oregon was an underdog, slight underdog. And I think that was just because of the matchups themselves. I don't think it had anything to do with the bye.
That's been my take all along. Maybe that will be the case. Maybe we'll find out 2 or 3 years down the road that is the case. But this year doesn't tell us that at all.
No, I agree.
All 3 games were inferior teams. And we can talk about the Oregon-Ohio State matchup being like Oregon, in theory, could have been the better team there. They'd already beaten Ohio State. But they met an Ohio State team that was playing heads and shoulders above anybody else in the country at the moment and wanted revenge on them. There was a lot going into that game.
No question.
That led to them getting blitzed like that to start. So I agree. I don't think, I mean, it may impact them, but we don't know that based off of this year.
Yes.
Have you watched a second of the other bowl games that aren't a part of the bowl?
Oh, hell yeah. I love the bowls. I don't know why I do. I like the opt-outs for the guy who hasn't played hardly at all and to see if he's got a chance to do something. I will say they're extraordinarily hard to wager on. I'm not going to lie to you there. I'm in a confidence pool where we have 2 bowl sheets. One has the first 21 games. The second one has the next 21 games. Doesn't have the beyond the semis. We're pretty much done after this weekend, so we don't go into the semis and the finals. But trying to rank those confidence points against the spread, but it also allows you then to sometimes pick out spreads and go, oh, wow, on the sheet it's only 7, but it shot up to 18 because of all the opt-outs. But some of those that have shot up, like the Texas Tech, Arkansas game. Arkansas supposedly had a bunch of opt-outs and ended up beating Texas Tech by 2 touchdowns. Alabama was like 8 points on our sheet as a favorite over Michigan. Michigan's down to a roster of not many, and they lost a bunch of dudes, and the line went up to, I think it closed at 18.5 Alabama, and they beat their ass outright.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. That game right there is exactly why these games have lost all meaning. I say, first of all, it's basketball season. I'm so busy this time of year that I don't need to watch like extra sports that are meaningless. So I'm not searching for meaningless college football.
See, I have a hard time watching meaningless non-conference college basketball. I honestly have a hard time watching Kentucky and Brown.
10 times more meaningful than a college football bowl game where guys have opted out and you're watching third stringers that are going to transfer somewhere else the following season. But here's the thing though. I would eliminate all of them because of the transfer portal and the way it works. I would eliminate all of them except for the playoff games and the Pop-Tart Bowl.
Pop-Tart Bowl did great. Pop-Tart Bowl did. Cheez-It Bowl tried to go cheesier with the wedding and with the giant cheese guy grabbing the bride. They tried to really cheese it up. But yeah, the Pop-Tart Bowl, that had everybody talking.
How do they do it? I mean, I know the Pop-Tart mascot was big, but they have really created this game becomes the craziest every year. And
yeah, they tried to make the Mayo Bowl the one where like the winning coach gets dunked with mayo. I don't want that sounds awful. That just sounds totally awful.
Yeah, the Pop-Tart Bowl has killed it, but also like they were helped out majorly this year. We've got to ask anything question about this, so we'll ask it now. But by Cam Ward, the quarterback for Miami, who some people have as the top overall draft pick in the upcoming NFL draft this summer. Do you think Cam Ward sitting out the second half of the Pop-Tart Bowl? He essentially played the first half
to get a record,
achieved a career record.
Yep.
And then he sat out the second half of the game because it's a meaningless game that no one cares about. Do you think that's going to cost him in the NFL draft?
I don't. Nor should it. I mean, listen, he helped his team score 28 or 31 first half points. At that point, your defense is allowed to stop somebody. You didn't need to lose the game 42-41. You're allowed to stop a 2-point conversion. You're allowed to make stops. So I don't know if that's on Cam Ward. I don't think it is. Again, he didn't have to give you anything. And I granted maybe that was a 2-way street of we'll get you the record, kid, and then we'll get you out, and it'll be good for you. It'll be good for us. We'll get maybe a half out of you. I don't have a problem.
If that was planned, then Mario Cristobal, the head coach, should have said that ahead of time.
Maybe.
Like, hey, he's going to be out at halftime.
Yeah, maybe.
And like, we're not going to do that to the kid. But I get where people are coming from of what this looks like. This looks like a guy who quit on his team in the middle of a game because he's about himself. I get that. Here's the problem, though. You guys have created this situation.
You're all about yourselves.
You have created a group of mercenaries. Half his team is leaving, go on to the next year through the transfer portal. They've opted out of the game already. It's meaningless for him. What if he gets injured? People are talking about this decision costing him millions because the way NFL GMs might
think NFL GMs are going to weigh this in any way, shape, or form. Right. They're not going to weigh this in any way, shape, or form. I guarantee you that.
Nor should they, but there's all types of columns by old men writing columns on the internet who are talking about how this is going to impact the way people view him. I'm like, look, if the decision is between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders for who you're taking with the top quarterback pick in the NFL draft, this decision that he made to sell out the second half can't play any factor in a me. I mean, look at Shedeur Sanders and prime time and what they're doing at Colorado. There's plenty of me going on there to be concerned about if that's your big concern overall when selecting a quarterback.
Dude, so here, if people use that logic, there's plenty of guys who opted out because they're about to enter the NFL draft and not play in their bowl game, or opted out to go transfer to another school. So they're all doing it. He just opted out in the middle of a game. Okay.
He just happened to play really well for 2 quarters before he decided to opt out.
And they needed him to play They needed him to score 50 points because their defense was lousy.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our pick'em segment where I had another good week. 6-2. You were 4-4. So 64-52 for me, 62-54 for you. I did mention last week, I said, I don't know why, but one of these games is going to have to be close, and I'm going to take Arizona State to cover against Texas. And
they did.
Sure enough, they did. So that was the separator there. We still have one game with the Notre Dame-Georgia matchup tonight that hasn't been decided from last week, so we'll add that on. The next college football games won't be until after next week's show, so we won't pick them until then. We have one game this week to pick. That is the Saturday 8 p.m. game between the Bengals in Pittsburgh playing against the Steelers. The spread is -1.5 in favor of the Bengals. The total is 48.5.
All right, I've been going wacky numbers. I'm going to go Bengals 26, Steelers 19. That Steelers offensive line that I watched on Christmas Day was an absolute disaster. Their offense has struggled since that Bengals game. Lou Anarumo made it a point to us this week. We talked about, what in the world went wrong the first time around. And he talked about 110 yards and checkdowns that they gave up. And some of that was coverage issues. Some of that was us trying to help. We got to fix that. We can't allow it. I think they will fix it. And I think the Bengals do go to Pittsburgh and win. It's not very easy. It's Mike Tomlin seems to have their number. But I think they make it even more heart-wrenching for everybody that they're going to pull this win off, this 5-game finish to finish it off, and then you're all going to feel sad at about 7:30 on Sunday when one of the two, if not both scenarios, occur with Denver and the Dolphins winning.
Brutal. That's exactly what I think is going to happen. I've got Bengals 31, Steelers 28. So Bengals cover, and I go over. Your number was under, so there's a little bit difference in our pick there. But I think you're right. I think they'll win, but I think they'll get one of the two games that they need. That would be even more frustrating. It's going to be brutal. But hey, I mean, what is your opinion on this? Is this annoying that it's come down to this, even though it's been a corpse of a season for most of the year, or is it at least we have another week of exciting football that we have to pay attention to?
It gave us, and I always say this, I root for me, so it gave me a week of content that was at least meaningful. And then the only negative is we still don't know what day locker room cleanout day is, and that's important for us because the last time you can talk to players. Obviously, you want to talk to Chase and Higgins about their contract situation. Last time we get to talk to Joe Burrow before he goes away. And so we don't know if they lose, if they're going to do it sometime on Sunday, if they're going to do it on Monday, no matter what. Now, if they win, they'll probably do it on Monday because they're going to have to wait for those results on Sunday before the players can leave. And then you factor in that most of us that are in the business aren't flying back on a charter like the team is. We're all driving to Pittsburgh, and we probably won't get done working till 2 or 3 in the morning. And then if locker room cleanout is at like 10:30 or 11 o'clock on Sunday back in Cincinnati, it means you get about an hour and a half sleep. You get up. Oh, by the way, there's a snowstorm coming as well. I'm already like gnashing my teeth wondering what my Saturday into Sunday is going to be like. So technically I don't do this often, and people are going to probably hate me for saying this because everybody wants the sportscaster, sports writer, sports people in their town to root for their team. I don't root. I root for me. I'm rooting for the Bengals to win, so at least I know that I can whatever the drive is on Sunday is not me rushing back on an hour and a half sleep. I can get a little bit of sleep before I head back.
Yeah, here's what I recommend. Regardless of what the situation is, screw it. Wake up when you wake up and go to DeLuca's Diner in Pittsburgh.
Luca's Diner, yeah.
Our Robert Morris game.
Fantastic. Nice. Was it downtown?
No, we go to the one because we stay out in Moon Township. By,
I know Moon Township. Yeah.
There's one in a shopping center there by like a Marshall's and everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
fantastic.
All right.
All right, let's get into some Ask Any Anything.
Let's do it.
These are all New Year's related, I believe.
All right. Yes.
What would your New Year's resolutions be for the Reds and Bengals, Skinny?
For the Reds would be wake the hell up. I mean, what have they done this offseason? All the things we talked about they needed, they've done none of it, right? Again, there's still some time, but before we blink, pitchers and catchers are going to be reporting. Do you want them reporting without fixing some of the needs that you had coming into this offseason?
Wake the hell up. Got it. Thank you. That's on the list. Put it on the calendar, on the whiteboard. What about for the Bengals?
Hire more scouts and somebody that can competently build a roster.
All right. 2 good ones. I like it. Are you a watch the ball drop guy?
I am. I don't go cuckoo over it, but we watched, like I said, we went back to somebody's house. We usually do. We usually go to a nice place for dinner. It's 2 families that they have 3 kids, and now a couple of them have grandkids. And so we always go to a nice restaurant for dinner and get back in time to then hang out at a house and watch New Year's Rockin' Eve. So I like the ball drop. I've watched it for many, many years, and it's still symptomatic of New Year's Eve for me.
So this seems like a back and forth between a wife and husband potentially that we might be settling here.
Okay.
As a watch the ball drop person, then do you think it's cheating to watch it drop in other time zones and celebrate then so you can go to bed earlier?
Not if you have to get up for a specific reason. Like in fact, our own Tara Blake, who does morning weather, I think she had to do it on New Year's Day as well. And she's like, usually I'm up working on this day, and so we do pick a time zone. We celebrate then. And then I can go to bed. That one I can understand. So if you have to get up super early because it's job specific, I'll give you that. But if it's like you get the holiday, or you're like, my work day on New Year's Day started at what time were we down there that day? Noon, because we talked to Darren Simmons yesterday after he came through the walkthrough. So like 12:15. So I was able to sleep in. Well, actually, I was up early for basketball practice. We had a 10 a.m. basketball practice, but neither here nor there. I mean, I could sleep till a normal time. Basically, I usually get up at 7 o'clock in the morning anyway. So yeah, I think that is cheating, Rick. I do.
I do too. Well, I think it's cheating if you want to be a watch the ball drop person.
Yeah,
if
sure.
you claim yourself as that, then you need to watch the ball drop at midnight if you actually care about that. Now, if you just have kids and you're trying to celebrate the evening with them and put them to bed as an activity, then absolutely. Like,
that's fair too. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
you should absolutely do it, but then don't be like I'm a strict watch the ball drop guy, which I don't even know why you would care about being that anyway. But that's what this person is asking us, so that's what we're answering.
I like it. I mean, it does sound like we're settling a dispute of some kind.
Yeah. What's the ideal New Year's Eve look like? I already told you mine. It was exactly what I did this year, which was sit in my recliner with a laptop in my lap, a college basketball game on, a college football game on, and that was it. Indian food too from Jot.
Yeah, I'm too old to just go, I'm just going to go get hammered. It's New Year's Eve. I'm not a big party guy either. Again, the way we've done it has been this way for a long, long time, of just a nice little simple get together, go out to a nice restaurant, have a few pops, have a few cocktails, come back, maybe sip a little cocktail here or there, grab a glass of champagne. And I don't feel like I'm crazy drunk and I'm waking up ready to go do what I need to do the next day. I like to bring in the New Year that way.
Has Skinny ever stuck to any New Year's resolutions?
Not a New Year's resolution guy. Because I know I'm going to break them. I'm not a big, listen, I certainly don't weigh what I weighed when I played sports in high school by any stretch of the imagination, but I've maintained the weight I'm currently at for probably 25 or 30 years, and I'm comfortable with it. Would I like to lose 10 or 15 pounds? Probably, but I'm not going to go to a resolution to do it. I'm just not a big resolution guy. I don't, because you're not going to stick to them, man. You're just not.
I feel like the psychology of a resolution doesn't really work.
No.
Like I think that's
and
the
it's
issue.
it's always self-improvement related. Like, I'm going to stop drinking for a while. But no, you're not. And if you are, good for you. Then just you don't need to make that a resolution. Just do it.
Just do it at the time that you've decided to do it. Yeah. If you're being like, I'm going to start on January 1st. It's just
could you do it on December 27th? I mean, my guy, you could do it 3 days, or you're allowed. I mean, and it's usually, I'm going to go to the gym more. Okay. Could you have gone on December 3rd to start that? Yeah, you probably could have.
Yeah. I think that's the issue, is when you decide things are going to be a temporary thing that started on a certain date, they usually don't last.
No, they don't last.
I don't even know how you're going to do this.
I love this, but go ahead.
Rank these classic New Year's songs by how long you could tolerate them on repeat. Auld Lang Syne, Celebration by Kool and the Gang, Don't Stop Believin' by Journey, 1999 by Prince, and Happy New Year by ABBA.
Yeah, I'm going to put ABBA last. I put ABBA last in just about everything. I'm not going to lie to you. They go last. Old Lang Syne would get old after a while. I'll put that at number 4. What else did we have? We had
1999 by Prince, Don't Stop Believin' by Journey, and Celebration by Kool and the Gang.
Well, here's the thing about 1999. Probably that should be ranked last because it didn't come to fruition. I mean, you might have partied like it was 1999, but then Y2K never really came to fruition, right?
Yeah, doing that in 2024 is tough.
Yeah, I'm going to rank that one last. And this is from somebody who I like Prince. I liked his music, thought he was great, all those things. And that song at the time was great. But then that's one that really, it was pretty much just a timely song. It kind of came and went. Yeah, I get the meaning of Party Like 1999, but the world didn't end then. And I don't know if it's going to end in 2025. So am I supposed to party now like it's 2024? I mean, what are we supposed to do?
But to be clear, Will Smith's album Millennium was a classic.
Millennium. I'm sure it was. I didn't have Millennium. All right. So what am I down to? Don't Stop Believing.
And Celebration.
I'll go Don't Stop Believing 2, Celebration 1.
Glad we did that exercise.
I like that exercise.
Does Skinny have any stories of having to perform his job after a New Year's Eve or any other night bender?
Chiefs on New Year's Eve, and we actually talked about trying to toast in the press box, and we didn't even toast with grape juice or anything. I don't think so. No, I'm sure I've had to get up on January 1st a couple of times in my life and go, crap, I got to go do work today, but nothing that stands out. I'll tell you that. Again, I'm a regular when it comes to having a cocktail here or there. So it's not like that's a night where I just go. I'm not a big binge drink guy. I like to drink. Don't get me wrong. I'm not. Trust me. When I go on the road on Saturday nights on the road, there's some famous stories about me floating around out there. But I don't think that's bingey to me. That's just me starting at a certain time and continuing to go on that night. It's what I do. Yeah, so yeah, New Year's Eve to me isn't that night that I'm like, trying to get drunk tonight. No, I'm not planning on that.
Yeah, it's just another day ending in Y.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the best late night munchies food after drinking?
Man, I would. So if you're out and about, there's no question. The thing I think I probably crush the most if I'm out and about, and hopefully somebody else is driving, is just Taco Bell. I don't know why that always hits the spot. I don't know why it does. And I don't have a hankering for it. Like I don't like on a day where it's like, well, nobody's at home. I don't feel like making anything. I'm just going to stop and get fast food. I usually don't. I usually end up coming home and making something, but I don't usually go Taco Bell. That's the answer. But by God, at 3:00 in the morning, if you've had a few Taco Bells, in fact, I can remember when my best friend from high school who's lived in Dallas for 30 some odd years, and that's where his children grew up, and his son got married 5 or 6 years ago, and my whole family went down for the wedding, and I got served enough, probably overserved. I wasn't like crazy hammered, but I had enough. But I had a hankering for something, and all of a sudden we pass a place Taco Bueno. And I made my daughter pull into Taco Bueno. And that's all I kept saying was, Taco Bueno, Taco Bueno. I want taco. So we got some Taco Bueno. It was delicious.
I have a feeling that's been said another time or two within your family since that fateful day.
Oh, yeah. My daughter will occasionally bring up the Taco Bueno night.
Yeah, you're a man after my own heart. That's exactly right. Tacos doesn't have to be Taco Bell, but Taco Bell is great to me. Yeah. I will eat Taco Bell for lunch on a normal Wednesday. But definitely if I'm drunk, or if I've had a few, it is Mexican tacos, chips, and queso.
I don't know why it just hits the spot. It just does.
Like capping a night off when we were first dating, my wife and I, every now and then we'd end up at like Bakersfield OTR at the end of our night, and ending it with like chips, guac, and a margarita was perfect way to finish off a night of drinking.
Yeah.
That's it. That's actually all we got. That's the last one.
All New Year's Eve related. I love it. Thanks so much. Hey, a reminder, next week we'll have the college football playoff semifinal set. We'll talk about that. The Bengals will either be preparing for a playoff game or we'll have the postmortem on them. And college basketball, all the local teams will be neck deep into conference play. For Rick Broering, I'm Richard Skinner. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly potpourri edition, presented by Blake, the Attorney Maisley.